Hello, Jose. How are you?
Andy, thank you very much for this interview. I'm honored and thrilled to have our conversation on the Priory of Brion days and also your memories and experiences as a musician, a fantastic musician you are.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm also a big fan of your YouTube, which seems to be going to greater and greater success. I think you really know your stuff, and you've done some excellent little documentaries on Led Zeppelin and all the stuff around that band. So it's lovely to be able to hook the two YouTubes together. I love when this happens, so hopefully some of my subscribers will come your way and some of yours will come mine, which is a fantastic thing. Yes. In the modern world.
Sure. Thank you, Andy. This is exciting. This is the first time I conduct an interview, really. So I have my list of questions so I don't, lose my train of thought. So just as an introduction, you played on the Priory of Brion tours of 1999 and the year 2000 with Robert Plant, Kevin Gammon, and a very solid cast of supporting musicians. I enjoyed all the recordings that I found, of course. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you some questions about your time.
I loved it. I mean, it was a very special time for me. So I look back on it in great fondness. So yeah, I always love talking about that period, which is now over 20 years ago. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's been a while, right? But I mean, when you listen to the recordings, it does sound like yesterday because the material sounds fresh. The versions are very fresh. So I wanted to first ask you, as a Zeppelin fan, that I know you are as well, what was your upbringing in England, admiring Led Zeppelin and the drumming legacy of John Bonham? Because it's different admiring Zeppelin, in the States or Latin America. But how is it up there in England?
Well, when I was a little kid and I first discovered bands like Iron Maiden and the new wave of British heavy metal that got me into music, I had no idea that Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or Judas Priest or ELO or any of these bands were actually from the area that I came from. They were just bands because all I had was the name and some songs. I didn't have biographies of these people. So when I first discovered Led Zeppelin, and when I heard Zeppelin, it was almost like the Holy Grail. I'd been looking for that in rock. I had no idea that they were from around where I lived, and that John Bonham literally lived at 10 minutes up the road, and Robert Plant literally lived 10 minutes up the road. I didn't know that was the case. I was just buying these albums, and it was the same as listening to like a Lynyrd Skynyrd album or ZZ Top. It was all. They were just rock bands to me, so I didn't get that connection till I was older. In the early 80s, Robert put a band called the Honey Drippers, which was very similar to the Priory of Brion in terms of pulling in some local guys. And so Robert would pop up in the local newspaper, doing these Honey Drippers gigs. And then I started thinking, oh my God, he's from actually around here, But when you're young, you don't put all this together. And then when I went to college, I was at Art College in Wolverhampton, and the Art College is right next to the Wolverhampton Wanderers football ground. So I come out one day and I'm walking past the football ground, and walking towards me comes Robert Plant. Now back then he was just like a rock star. I didn't have any connection to. It was just this rock star walking towards me, and I went, oh my God, that's Robert Plant. And I attempted to run all the way around Wolverhampton football ground. I tried to run around just so I could walk past him again, but I didn't catch him. But that was the first time I saw him with my own eyes, not knowing that our paths would eventually cross, so yeah.
Amazing.
That's I never had any awareness that Robert or John Bonham, I mean John Bonham's grave is just up the road, and there's a video on my site where I actually decided halfway through the video to sort of jump in the car and go and visit it, which is seems to shock a lot of people that don't live here, that
right.
That John Bonham's actually just buried up the road. It's a very strange thing, but we're in the centre of rock music, the Midlands. There's so many bands that come out of this area.
And also the back cover for Led Zeppelin 4, because I know that their apartment building is in the Midlands, right?
Yeah,
in the West Midlands.
it looks really like a familiar sight that you'd get sort of in with the suburbs of Birmingham or something like that. Yes, without a doubt.
Nice. Okay, so
then I'll tell you something that people don't know.
Oh, okay.
Here's something that people don't know. Is just outside my town there's a pub, and the pub's got two ways in. Now, in the old days in England, we used to have a thing called an outdoor. Now, the outdoor was where if you didn't want to go into the pub, but you wanted to buy, say, a packet of crisps and a drink, you could go up to the outdoor and buy your crisps. This is an old 70s thing, 60s thing. Now, the pub that's just outside Kidderminster, the only way into the bar is if you go in through the outdoor.
Like this one right here.
That's where that line comes from. It commemorates a little pub. I know exactly what pub it is. I won't say because it'll get inundated by people. But it celebrates a little pub outside Kidderminster. Of course, someone like Prince, there was such a Led Zepp fan that I think in one of his songs he actually uses the word "in through the outdoor." I think it's so strange without any idea of where that comes from. So I think there's a lot of hidden sort of local Midlands references in Robert's lyrics.
Well, I mean, you just revealed a secret for me because I have 47 copies of Into the Outdoor.
Oh my God, 47!
I have 47 copies, and I have 48 and 49 coming soon.
Because there was more than one cover on that, wasn't there? There was multiple.
So it's 6 covers. It has 6 covers, but it got to a point where I just buy every copy more than once. And it's an obsession. It's a fever now. It's a
And the inner sleeve, when I bought it, you could add water to it, and colours would emerge.
Right.
And, and obviously, I don't know how long they did that for, but I bought it. I bought mine a good 10 years. It would have been probably 4 or 5 years after it had come out. So I don't know how long they did for that. And of course, as a kid, as soon as I got the album home, I stuck water on it, and so mine's got the colours on, but I don't know whether it's hard to get one without that. I don't know. You must have all of them, mustn't you?
It is. I got some Japanese imports, and of course they take care of the records. They never open them. Most of them are sealed, and I have some of the watercolor thing there if I wanted to add water, but we'll see. I have 47 of them, and I'm just obsessed with that record. So thank you for that reference because it means a lot to me. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned your meetings with Robert Plant on your video on Priory of Brion. What was he like away from the stage as a person?
Robert's pretty much like when you see him interviewed, that is what he's like. It was when I first met Robert, I was quite in awe of him being such a huge Led Zeppelin fan. More recently, I've been playing with Bev Bevan, who's the drummer of ELO, and I'm not an ELO fan, really. So Bev's just like a mate. But with Robert, I could never quite get my head around the fact that I was with Robert Plant. It always seemed really strange, that was it. It took me a while to get used to him. So, yeah, that. But in terms of his personalities, he's exactly what you would expect. Which is for me is like a cross between some sort of Tolkien-esque elf character and a big game hunter. He's somewhere between the two of those, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah. I can definitely see that.
That was what I came up with when I was in the band. I thought, how do you describe Robert? And I thought, he's a cross. What's the guy? Is it Elrond? He's crossed between Elrond and a big game hunter. He's somewhere between the two of those.
Yeah, that's quite a character. Yeah.
Yeah, he is a unique character, without a doubt.
So talking about the Priory of Brion, the rehearsals for the 1999 tour and the tour of the year 2000, were there any differences in the preparations for both tours? Because I know their 1999 tour was shorter and the 2000 was like 64 dates. Was there any differences in the preparation for them?
It didn't seem like a tour. It just seemed like ongoing dates, the rehearsals happened up at Robert's house. It was unlike any other band Robert's ever done, because I'm sure with his other bands he goes to a nice rehearsal room. But we were rehearsing up at Robert's house, in a big room. And I remember asking him. I said, I brought my drum kit down, but I didn't really want to bring my drum kit down every time to rehearse. I said, "Have you got a kit there?" And he pulled out this old Ludwig kit out of like a part of his garage, and I grabbed this kit and I used this on the first 2 gigs.
Oh, okay.
And I can remember going up to Robert and saying, "This kit you've lent me, it's a 1969 Ludwig kit. It's got to be worth something. Have you got any cases for it? Because I'm just carting around the car with no cases on." And he went, "Yes." So he goes off and brings the cases in, and the cases come in, and on those cases it says John Bonham, Led Zeppelin on the cases, and I'm like, "Oh my God, are those John Bonham's cases, Robert?" And he goes, "Well, it's John Bonham's kit."
Oh wait.
that's what I rehearsed on now. That kit is since sold, and I think some of the money went towards that incredible monument in Redditch to John Bonham, which is an incredible, probably the best monument to any rock star in the world that I've seen, because most of them look awful. They look like Han Solo when he gets cast in that, that type of look. But that's a beautiful monument. But I played John Bonham's kit, like had it in the back of my car. It's absolutely mad.
Wow.
And because I changed the heads, I should have brought it in. I've got a Ludwig head from '69 that I took off that kit, so I don't know whether it was always on that kit, and I don't know whether it was one that John Bonham played, but I've got it in my garage, but I've definitely got a couple of heads that were on John Bonham's kit, without a doubt. So I always had that little bit of awe towards that band, because I just loved them so much when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine the feeling of playing with Robert himself. When you started playing, what was like the instructions or guidelines? You just had like a list of songs you wanted to play, and you took the arrangements from there, or?
The first gig wasn't a Priory of Brion gig. There was a local gig that Robert, he was in a tennis club, and they were having a charity night on, and it was almost like a couple of guys who were in the tennis club were getting up and playing in their band. And so it's like, "Robert, you want to do something?" So, Robert's very good mates with Kevin Gammond, who was the guitarist in the Band of Joy with Robert and John. So he says, "Kevin, should we get up and have a jam?" So I was really good friends with Kev. So Kev comes to me and says, "Do you want to drum in it?" And I was like, "What was Robert plans?" And if I'd have only just done that one gig, it would have been incredible. So we played in this little tennis club. And so we had to do a rehearsal. So it was like, Kev rings up and said, "We got to go for a rehearsal." And so I went down to a little rehearsal room, and it was a bit grotty. And there was this little PA, and I remember Robert couldn't find a long enough microphone cable. And so he was holding this microphone with like 5-foot cable, and it was exactly like when you're a kid and you go to a rehearsal room. And I got a rubbish drum kit, and I can remember I started getting the sound out of it, and I put a rock beat down. The bass player started playing a bass line, and then Kev started playing some guitar riff, and then Robert's got this mic and he starts singing. And I remember thinking, this is just like every other band I've ever been in, except as soon as Robert's voice, I can remember him going up to that PA and he EQ'd, blah, 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 and then suddenly this voice comes out, which it's a sort of voice where he could sing anything and it sounds like the real deal. You don't have to do anything behind him, because he's going to make it sound like the real deal, whatever, because it's Robert Plant, So that was the difference. But in terms of instructions, once the Priory got up and going, Robert would say, it was a very special time, because I think Robert had been doing Page and Plant, and I think the whole hoopla of that he was getting tired of. He was playing in one enormous, cold, enormous, probably, like a hockey ice rink or something like that. And he's in there playing these songs he's been playing for 30 years. And I think he wanted to change, and he didn't know what the change was. And of course, when I was doing these early gigs with him, before the Priory was going, he was coming down and jamming with me, and he kept saying, I'm enjoying this more than Page and Plant. This is like really fun, because he was just able to bring in any song he liked. You know, if he wanted to do a reggae song or he wanted to do like a James Brown song, and we would just do whatever. And he was really enjoying it. And I think he realized that he was going to have to make a change. And so a lot of the changes I saw him then take, comparing his solo career to what happens after the Priory, a lot of that stuff we were sketching out with him. We were the ones who were trying out country songs. We were the ones who were trying out folk songs. And so Robert would come in and he would give us the song, and we had to change it. We couldn't just play it note for note. And so he would go try and come up with something, and then he'd walk off, you know, and he'd go and have a cup of tea and he'd make some phone calls and try and run his proper business, you know, and then he'd come in and say, what have you got? Pick up a mic and we play through. And if it worked, he would go with it. He didn't give instructions so much, but he had a really high quality level. So you always felt that you had to step up and come up with something as special as you possibly could. But it wasn't to do with playing well or being technically brilliant. It was something else. You had to try and expose a spirit that was within the song. Now, back then when I was 30, I didn't quite get this. And after 20 years of thinking about how I dealt with it, now I'm 55, I think, oh my God, I'd love to get back in there now, because I have so much more appreciation of that Robert was trying to draw out something out of these songs that was historic and that referred to the past, but also pointed to the future. That was what he was trying to do. And I wish I could have helped him a little bit better in doing that, because a lot of the time it's like, oh, I'm playing with Robert Plant and I want to do some John Bonham fills, you know, and that was what I was like back then. But I think part of it was our naivety. Robert enjoyed. I think he liked having somebody who was seeing the experience of what he does through our eyes. So we were always in awe of everything, you know, whatever was going on. We were like kids going, oh, wow, we want a tour bus. Oh, my God, you know. And I think he just enjoyed that as well, you see. I think he was looking for something and he didn't know what it was.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that he gave you guys time to come up with arrangements, because one of the songs, As Long As I Have You, I'm guessing you guys didn't listen to the Zeppelin bootlegs from '69.
No, I was a big Zepp fan, but I knew that they'd done versions of it, but I hadn't heard them. But As Long As I Have You, you picked on a funny one, because the middle section of that was always completely improvised every single night. That wasn't worked out. And there was a lot of bits where nothing was worked out. Or I can remember playing in Norway one night, and I think Bo Diddley had died. And so, you know, and this is like, you hear that Zeppelin would do this. So we'd go, well, let's do a Bo Diddley song. And I'd go, well, what's that, Robert? And he goes, well, you know the Bo Diddley beat. So you'd literally go, bump, bump, bunch, bump, 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 you know, like this. And then everyone would start jamming in. And then Robert would just form it into a song. He'd start singing something. And you're in the middle of something with a big audience, with not a clue how long you were going to play, when you were going to stop, when you're going to start. You just didn't know. You were just making it all up on the spot, you know. Incredible experience, incredible.
Yeah, because going over the recordings, that part of the show, you feel it's free, but at the same time you're plugged in together. And something I appreciated from the drumming itself, it's very fresh and it has a very jazz influence to it, which I think when we formed the Priory of Brion, I knew I was going to play with Kev, and Robert approached me and he says, have you got a band? And I had a jazz trio that was playing jazz standards. It was a proper jazz group. And I got a bit miffed, because when we got pulled in the early days, a lot of the press went, oh, they're sort of pub bar room players. And we were jazz players. We were, you know, me, Paul and Tim were all jazz players, really. And we like to improvise. And so I think that's why it works, because we would just improvise all the time. If you check out online, there's a video of us playing in Italy, in Rome. And in that, we do a version of White Rabbit. And if you listen to actually when we're jamming,
we're playing Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. And I don't even think Robert knew that, because if Robert had known we were doing that, he might have said, you're not playing Miles Davis. So we'd snuck that in. But if you listen to it, that riff that we're jamming over and all that, we're channeling Miles Davis. So there was a lot of those influences coming in.
Yeah, I could sense it, like on songs like Darkness, which it has like a sort of no quarter jam vibe to it, but still it's different. And I think it's almost a timeless quality.
Well, I've got something for you here. I've got some little treats for you.
Oh, let's see it. Oh, you have them.
So if you know the bootlegs, Darkness.
Yes.
And those are the actual. These, I don't know if you can see. These are the actual ones I used in the Priory, and these were given to me by Robert. They are unbelievably heavy and high quality, and I've still got them, and I'm very proud to have them. And so that is the.
That's so cool, man, and the sound it's so distinctive.
Yeah, oh God, yeah, it was. And to think that we were doing gigs, sometimes 20,000 seaters, and I could sit there and we'd start up, and these are pretty much acoustic.
Yeah.
If you think about it, my drum mics would be picking up a little bit, and as soon as I did that and stood up and do that, you could feel it was an incredible thing. Yeah, it was an incredible incredible experience to have, and that was always my favorite bit when we did Darkness. And then in the middle, it was just like Robert would walk off and you go, right then guys, go for it. And we would then go into this sort of really dark jazz, heavy improvising. Kev Gammon would bring out all that sort, because Kev's almost like Sonny Sharrock or Derek Bailey. He's like a free jazz guitarist. We were jazz players, but Kev was almost like an avant-garde guitar player. And I thought it was brilliant because it just shut up the Jimmy Page comparisons. Kev was just so different. And I felt like Kev was the X factor in that band. Now, there's recently an article just came out, Kev sent me over, where someone has spotted that Kev was actually bringing in, highly avant-garde, experimental, free jazz into Robert's orbit, which is very interesting, because I don't think any other guitarist has ever really done that with Robert. No,
his guitars, from all his career, they have a style, but Kevin really went for it. And he did. In the solo sections, you can tell he doesn't know where he's going to go, which makes it more exciting. And I agree, it's in the vein of free jazz, which is a style of music I personally enjoy very much.
Oh, that's nice to know. I like that. You see, and this is the thing about Led Zeppelin. I've always said, when I discovered Led Zeppelin, I was into rock music. And then when I got into Led Zeppelin, it opened the door. Because I once said this, it opened the door to the Mahavishnu Orchestra, to John Coltrane, to Miles Davis, to Stravinsky, to all this music. And what was interesting, I would sit and chat to Robert and say, what do you think of this group? And he'd go, I don't like them. And I was thinking, that's mad, because I wouldn't have discovered that band if it wasn't for Led Zeppelin,
Right.
But of course, with Zeppelin, there were so many other different influences. I'm a massive Mahavishnu Orchestra. If you watch the channel, you'll know this. So
I watch it. Yeah, I know
I used to talk a lot about the Mahavishnu Orchestra with Roberts, and because of course John McLaughlin gave lessons to Jimmy Page. Now everyone sort of knows this, but back 20 years ago, me with my encyclopedic knowledge, I knew this, and I used to say John McLaughlin gave Jimmy Page lessons, and Robert would go, no, he didn't. It's like this.
No, and actually, if you listen to the Jimmy solo on No Quarter from The Song Remains the Same, there's modal playing in there that comes from jazz, and in Dazed and Confused as well.
And that was John Paul Jones, because Robert told me that.
Okay.
Robert said that John Paul Jones came and said, I got this idea for No Quarter and it's modal. And they were going, what the hell's modal? And, because John Paul Jones, again, was just such a genius musician.
He is, absolutely. No, I meant the guitar solo on the live versions for Jimmy.
On Song Remains the Same, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there's some bits in Dazed and Confused, from his solo into the middle section. That one day I was listening to Penderecki, the classical composer. There's an influence of the Hiroshima works on Jimmy's violin bow, and I catched it, and I'm like, yeah, they really they listen to a lot of music.
I know exactly what you mean. And there's also, I always thought there's a part of Holst the Planets, isn't there, in that violin solo as well? That that rising sort of augmented. I think it's augmented. It's you know, the sort of major triads moving in a flat 5 pattern. You know, they were something else. They were something. I mean, they knew what they were doing.
Let me just add a brief comment on free jazz. One of my favorite albums, and I think my neighbors hate me for that, is a Peter Brotzman Machine Gun album from '68. I love that album, and I'll listen. I'll cram this, play that at volume 11 because I love that album so much. And I try to play that, with some musicians friends of mine, but they looked at me like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like,
well,
yes.
I love that album. I tell you who really loves that album is Kevin Gammond.
Really?
When Peter Brotzman died, I called Kev straight up. I said, Peter Brotzman died. He said, oh, no. Is that true? And yeah, we had a big chat about it. And I was able to get a copy of Machine Gun in the early 90s. But it was hard to get hold of. Now you can just go on YouTube. And Kev, I taped a copy for Kev because he was looking at it. But Kev's big... The guy he used to listen to loads back then when we were doing the Priory was Anthony Braxton. And this is brilliant to have this interview with you, to be able to say these are the things that are surround, these musicians. But also Robert opened me up to people like Charlie Patton and Skip James, and he opened me up to so much different music. He made me understand the sort of legacy of, I suppose, American music, blues and jazz, and how that affected British rock music, which is if you watch my channel, is a subject I am obsessed with now. But that all goes back to Robert. It was I became fascinated how that sort of generation were able to take such weird influences, like sort of the West Coast, Los Angeles psychedelic music and that garage stuff, and then mix it with, Robert Johnson, and mix it with then skiffle and all this stuff, and really create something that ends up sounding like Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin or Yes or Gentle Giant or King Crimson. So I'm fascinated by that.
It is a fascinating topic, and with Sabbath, for example, some of the riffs, I can trace back to Messiaen and some of the avant-garde composers, and it's very interesting to see the correlation of the musical styles. Let me ask you this about the Priory of Brion. I saw the maps on Google Earth, which I manually did, adding all the tour dates, and looking at all that traveling. What was the traveling like, and the itinerary for the logistics of the tour?
I loved it back then. We got warned about it. They said, "Oh, there's going to be some serious traveling," and but you were traveling with Robert Plant, and it was always an adventure. And I've got so many stories about the traveling. That we did one tour of Ireland where we opened up for Van Morrison, and when we got picked up for the airport, this guy drives us off with a minibus. And now Robert had got his own car; he was getting shuffled around, but he had to go in this minibus to the hotel. And as we're driving off, the driver starts to open up about the history of Ireland. He said, we were driving down this street, and he's saying, "This is where so and so happened." And Robert loved this, so he gets in touch with the minicab company. He said, "We want this guy for the whole tour." And then Robert sat with us in that minibus for the whole tour. Now, the reason why he was being driven around was not because he's a rock star. It's because of that car crash. He got this bad back, and sat on a minibus was going to kill him, but he still wanted to do it. And so this tour around Ireland, we were basically then visiting monasteries, and we were visiting the sights and sound, and it was an incredible experience. And very civilized, you know, we'd stop for a cup of tea and then walk around to some abbey somewhere, you know, and Robert was, you know, he's fascinated with that sort of history. And that was an incredible experience, you know. I also remember we did a gig in Naples, and we got trapped, and we had to Robert had to be taken out because the crowd were going to go nuts. You know, Naples famous for sort of rioting crowds. So we were used as a decoy, and they shuffled Robert out before the gig had finished. He sort of walked off stage, jumped in the car, and driven off before the gig, and we carried on playing until he'd gone. And then we had to run to this bus. We jumped on the bus, and then we had a police escort out of Naples with a full, you know, crowds and crowds of people running after us, holding onto the bus. Wow. And all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I can remember that as clear as day. And you know, we were eventually driven out to an airport, and we got on this little plane, flew over the Alps to Switzerland. It was all that type of stuff. It was an incredible thing. So the traveling, I mean, now I'm older, I'd probably hate it, you know, but back then I was with my mates, we were going all over the world, and it was all very exciting. You know, if we were playing in Paris, you know, we'd do the gig, and then once the gig had finished, we'd try and get up the top of the Eiffel Tower before we got there was all that type of stuff. So it was great fun. And I've got to thank Robert for that. You know, if Robert hadn't come along, he gave me so many incredible memories. And it wasn't like a normal tour. You know, Robert wanted to have an experience. And, you know, when we played Norway, he somehow hired a 1970s coach, and we got driven right to the top of Norway, right into the Arctic Circle, and we went and had some fish in this little place. And I can remember wandering down, you know, to the beach, this ice beach, and stood there going, my God, I can't believe I'm here. This is, but there's nobody else there. You know, so incredible experiences. And all the experiences I had got nothing to do with like rock and roll hoopla. It was all about being with your friends, playing music, and going to incredible places and meeting people. That's what it was. It was all that stuff that I treasure now.
It's great. I was going to ask you about Norway, because I saw it on the map, and I Googled, I zoom into the venues and places, and the scenery is just beautiful.
Oh, so incredible, yeah. Great. And I can remember doing that gig, and then once we'd finished, we went back to the hotel room, and of course it doesn't go dark. And so we're lying in bed, and my mate rings me up and said, Andy, I can't get to sleep. So shall we go for a walk then? So we go for a walk 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're turning out all the nightclubs. So there's all these people staggering around completely drunk, but it's broad daylight. And it was like being in a zombie town. Everyone was like coming towards you, like, oh. Like, so we were like, oh, you know, it just seems so strange, you know. So I got so many of these bizarre stories from that 2 years of being out with Robert.
That's awesome. In terms of the experiences of the tour, do you have your favorite experience and maybe your least favorite? I mean, both concert or maybe after the concert?
There's so many things. Like I can remember we're playing in Finland with BB King, and I'm hanging out with Eric Sardinas, which is amazing because Eric Sardinas is an incredible blues guitarist. And someone comes up to Eric and says, "Do you want to meet BB King?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so I went, "Can I come?" Because I didn't matter as much as Eric. So we get taken to the back of the stage, and then a white Cadillac drives into the back of the gig, and out gets BB King, and we shake hands with BB King. Now, the other day I messaged Eric Sardinas on Facebook and said, "Do you remember when we met BB King?" He went, I do. And he goes, "I remember you." He said, because that was the day I met BB King. So I can remember then we went back to the hotel after the gig, and the guy BB King and that band was sat in the foyer of that place, and as I walked in, one of them said, "That's Led Zeppelin's drummer there." So they were like looking at me. And then a couple of weeks later we played again in Italy, and we did a gig at Pistoia Blues Festival that John Paul Jones also played at, and we were again on with BB King. And I can remember coming out, and I'd come off stage and he was about to go on, and he was even then, back then, he was still having to be helped to get his guitar because he wasn't fully mobile. And he saw me and he went, "Hi, how are you?" And I went, I'm good, BB, thanks. And I thought, oh my God, BB King for 5 minutes knew who I was. You know,
awesome.
We did it when we played in Bergen. We'd done the gig, and then somebody came in and says, "Buddy Guy's playing." And so we get driven over to this venue, and Buddy Guy's on stage playing. He's actually doing the gig, and we're in the dressing room. And Buddy Guy has this radio mic on his guitar because he's famous for walking around. So as soon as he hears Robert's there, he just walks off stage. God knows what the audience thought, because he was playing to about 2,000 people. He walks off stage into the dressing room, and we've been introduced to him, and he's chatting to us, saying hello, while still doing the gig, literally in the dressing room, 2 foot away. He's going, and he did like this. Oh yeah, guys. And then I remember he said, "Robert, do you want to do one?" And he went, "Yeah, sure." They didn't even say what it was. And they just walked straight back out, and then a big round of applause. And Robert goes up to the mic, and whatever they were playing, he knew all the lyrics to, and just went straight into it. And you sat there going, "Oh my God, I'm with the gods." You know, Buddy Guy. Yes. You know, it was just incredible, because these musicians, Buddy Guy, BB King, and we, you know, we did Nice Jazz Festival, where we played with Booker T and the MGs. Not just famous musicians, but musicians that that formed us as people, you know. So yeah, all that was incredible, you know. The worst bit of it, I suppose, was towards the end, when the band started to fall apart a little bit, and the last few gigs, the vibe had gone. You know, I think Robert was ready to move on, but he was still keeping it going because he had some allegiance to us. We were getting cranky, we were getting stressed, and towards the end, it got a little bit stressful. But that was down to us being young, naive, and not really, you know, being able to get our heads around what we were doing. It was a very strange experience to be in, you know, to be playing with Robert. Right. You know. So I think towards the end we were perhaps a little bit unprofessional, but you know, I've obviously seen Robert a lot of times since then, and I've even done gigs with him since then. So you know, he's always been brilliant to me, always.
Good stuff. I want to ask you on the Zeppelin topic. Was there any Zeppelin songs suggested, or like a casual jam at sound checks at all, or was it like strictly no?
Zeppelin? Yeah. I got loads of stories like that, and I'm trying to tell you stuff that isn't in any book, so you've got stuff that no one's ever heard before. So we went to Rockfield, which is a big residential studio in sort of Wales, South Wales, on the borderland of Wales and England. Legendary place where Queen did Bohemian Rhapsody and Rush did Hemispheres and Farewell to Kings, you know, a legendary place. Now these recordings have never seen the light of day. We did some other recordings elsewhere, and they have seen the light of day, but these recordings have never seen. They're in Robert's vaults, right? Now we were set up as a residential studio, and one morning me and the bass player had got up and we got in, and I was set up actually in the hallway, and he was set, so we couldn't see each other, but we got the headphones on. So I start jamming, and he starts to play Immigrant Song, but he's doing it like slap bass. Now this is a bit of a joke because Robert hated slap bass, so when Robert wasn't around, he would do tons of slap bass. So it was almost like going, "Oh, Robert, you see, he's not here." So he's going and playing the slap version of Immigrant Song, and so we're jamming on that, and then suddenly over the headphones we hear yeah, and Robert had spotted it, jumped onto the mic and was singing the thing, and so that was played. We did do We're Gonna Groove, but we did it more like the Benny King original. We did do some weird reggae version of which one was it? Was There's an Angel on My Shoulder? I can't remember. So we would reference There's an Angel on My Shoulder.
Houses of the Holy.
Houses of the Holy, of course, yes. So we used to do Houses of the Holy. Robert would make a big thing of going, "We're not going to do Zepp songs," and then he would sneak them in on the gigs every now and then and try and catch people out. We did a gig at Stourbridge Town Hall, and if you listen to the bootleg of that, there's 1 minute where Robert cracks a joke about Kev. So Kev gets his own back by playing the opening of Stairway to Heaven, and as soon as he plays it, the audience go nuts. And Robert says something like, "No, we're not going there," or something like that. So,
Yeah.
no, I would have loved to play Zeppelin songs, with Robert Plant, but the thing about the Priory was that it was so much better not to. And Robert was 100% right. And I wanted to be playing to 30,000 people playing Zepp songs. That would have been back then my dream. But actually, when we were playing like a James Brown song in a pub to 200 people, that's when it was electric, because an audience would come in, and Dave Hodgetts, who was he used to sort of look after Robert, and he sadly died the same year that they did the Celebration Day. In fact, there's that quote where Robert said, "How did it sound, Dave?" or something. And I can remember Dave saying to me, he said, "You guys should just keep this in the small venues." And we're like, "No, we got to do the big venues," and all that bit. But he was right, and looking back on it, that was where it was electric. To have someone like Robert Plant doing something completely what no rock star of that level would do, turning up to a pub, setting up on stage, just a vocal PA, and playing cover songs that like any normal person would do, which is what was the idea of the band, and that was an incredible thing,
No, and I think that the recordings, I mean, you have to listen and listen, sit down and listen to the feel of the recordings. Because when I was doing the episode, I did the 100 Rippers 1981 episode in September of last year. And you're right about the small venues really capture the essence of a band. And when I listen to the Priory of Brion shows, I'm like, this really kicks ass because it has the intensity, the proximity to the audience, and also within the band, you can really look at each other. And also I think it resembles some of the, let's say, the Led Zeppelin's tour of the UK in late 72, early 73, where they were playing smaller venues in comparison to the States. But the musical chemistry is always better in the smaller venues. And I sense this on the Priory of Brion recording.
That's what Robert needed to dip his toe into that. I mean, it was last night on Facebook, Dave Lewis, who's one of the biographers of Led Zeppelin, I'm sure you've got a ton of his books, he put up a thing and he went, 24 years ago today, I was at Ashby de la Zouch at a Robert Plant gig. Now, that was yesterday, but 24, that was Halloween, and I didn't realise this. Now, that gig, we did it in a tent to about 200 people. So we were booked to play this folk festival, and they stick us in a tent, right? We set up, we go off, we have our dinner, and then we go back. And the tent is full. And the only way to get into the tent is through the tent entrance, which is at the back of the audience. So there was just no way to get to the stage, none at all. And we sat there going, and this is what things I remember. We sat there going, how are we going to get on stage? There's no way to get. We can't ask them all to come back out, and then we'll get on. And then we'll. So someone said, well, we're going to have to cut a hole in the back of the stage. But of course, people they're going, we hired this tent. You can't cut, well, don't cut a big hole. So they decide to cut a hole which is about 18 inches, to which we all crawled through one by one in full view of the audience in laughter as we all came through like someone, like we're being given birth to. And right at the end, then Robert then puts his head through the hole like this and looks round to this huge applause and laughter, and then crawls his way out. And I remember he didn't get up then. He just carried on crawling all the way up, grabbed the mic, pulled himself up to the mic. And I mean, the gig started like that, it was that bonkers, wow. And those sort of experiences and being able to see that. And see, Robert's the sort of guy that can handle that. He is a proper frontman. He can handle whatever happens. That was something I learned from him. We were always jamming, we was always improvising. You couldn't go wrong because it was all about how you it's tight but loose. It's how you bend with what the situation is. Whatever happened. I mean, I can remember there was one gig where I hadn't done the sound check because I had to go somewhere, and I turned up late, and I was like 20 minutes to go, so I just got dressed, walked out on stage, went into the first song. I got my head down. I'm doing all these tom fills, really fast tom fills, and the band doesn't come in, and I'm playing, like this, and I look up, and the band are all staring at me, and I'll go, what? I'll stop. What? And Robert goes, look at the set list. And I looked down, and they changed the set list, and I didn't realise. And that was the beginning of the gig in front of about 2,000 or 3,000 people. I'd cocked up the entrance, and then Robert, he went, are you Alistair? Because he used to call me Alistair. Are you okay, Alistair? I said, I got the wrong song. He said, well, can you do it right this time? And they were all laughing their heads off. And Robert would take that and run with it. You didn't feel like he wouldn't come off stage and say, right, Andy, you made a mess. That there was nothing like that. I mean, we did a tour with Van Morrison, and Van Morrison seemed to be exactly like that. That I would hate to have been in a band with someone like that, because you could have felt that he would have been on anything everyone was doing. But Robert wasn't like that. It was just so. It was just a laugh. It was fun. He was there to have as much fun as he could, but it was serious fun, and the music had to be respected at all times. But he would never tell you off about something. He would just come and have a chat to you about it. And nice. I didn't appreciate all this when I was younger. As I've got older and played in all sorts of different bands, I've done a lot more since. I could see how special it was and why Robert is Robert Plant. If that makes sense.
And on that thought, I wanted to ask you, how did it change your perspective on Robert? Because I imagine listening to a Zeppelin album after playing with him must have felt different, because you were with him, on the same band. Do you have different emotions on maybe songs?
This is a really weird thing, and I don't know whether I'm being arrogant in saying this. It sounds a little bit egotistical, but after I play with Robert, you feel like you're a tiny part of the Led Zeppelin story. So if you pick up an encyclopedia and leaf through it, you're going to find a paragraph where it says Robert Plant did the Priory of Brion in 99, and whatever. There's going to be some mention of it. So you suddenly feel like you're a part of it. You feel like you're part of that story, although very tiny part of it. And that's the big difference. And of course, being inside it, you see everything in a different way, and you have more insight into the history of how it all happened. I know a lot more because I would sit and chat with Robert, or he'd tell us stories about things, and you'd get all sorts of, like, for example, like I remember him saying, he said to me, well, of course, when we were doing Physical Graffiti, so I just had a message through. So when we were doing Physical Graffiti, John Paul Jones left. He said he left the band. What he actually left? Oh yeah, he'd left the band. He wasn't coming back. He said, so what did you do? He said, well, we didn't know what to do, so we just played Elvis Presley songs. Do you want to listen? And he pulls out this tape, and it's him, Jimmy Page, and John Bonham doing Elvis Presley songs. Now I'm pretty sure this must have appeared on the internet, but back then I was completely unaware of any of this, and heard these incredibly recorded that sounded like, he got the actual tapes, and I was blown away by this. And then you start to go, oh my God. So when they're doing Kashmir, that's all that must have been done guitar and drums, because John Paul Jones wasn't there. And John Paul Jones has come back in later and overdubbed his bass later on. And then you start to see that, and whereas if you listen to something like In Through the Outdoor, House of the Holy, you feel like John Paul Jones is all over it. But with Kashmir, you start to realise it's much more of a Jimmy Page. And that's not something you're reading, it's something you can work out because you've been inside it, and if you've seen, because so many times Robert would go to me. Now I'm a technical player, I've got a lot of chops, right?
Yes.
And Robert would go, have you got a drum beat for that? And I do some fancy beat. He goes, no, that's not what I want. He goes, I wish I could tell you what I want. Try something else. And I'd try something else, and I couldn't come up with it. And I'd sit there and think, he needs John Bonham here. He needs John Bonham to come up with the drum beat to when the levee breaks, and I can't do it. And it's nothing to do with chops. It's to do with being inside the song. you know, and being able to come up with that thing that just pulls it together and then gives Robert this thing to sit on top of. And I really became aware of the relationship between Jimmy Page and Robert, which was really something else, you know, that Jimmy Page, that the way that I mean, they said, didn't they, that on the first time they got together and rehearsed, you know, within, did they do Train Kept a Rolling or something like that? I can't remember that. Some blues tune. They're like a few bars in, and they're like looking at each other like, oh my God, what's happened? And you start to realize that is what music's about. And I came out of it realizing, and now I believe music's really made out of love. It's like you have a love for the music and you have a love for the musicians. And if you can open yourself up to that, and now I'm sure Robert was channeling a bit of my sort of youthful exuberance back then, but that's what I learned from it. And I hope Robert watches this, because and I'm going to try and tell Kev to say, make Robert watch this, because I've done this interview, but I that is what I learned. The music's made out of love, and if the more you can be empathetic to the musicians around you and try and channel yourself through the song to the truth of what is there, whatever that may be, that is the height, that's the highest thing. And so much music I played is not on that level. And so it is more about technical things and be able to play this right and wrong. And that's what a lot, but once you get to that level, it's about truth and love. That's what I learned, you know, from Robert, which is a heavy thing to learn. So I hope it's because I say thank you. I'm looking at the cameras. Thank you, Robert. You know, because I love music. My whole life's been music. I've had incredible experiences, and it's learning stuff like that. That is really what's driving us. I'm sure Robert's he's still learning. He's still trying to find out, get closer to that truth of what it is that music does and what it's about. And I think that's something I learned. And so I'm really glad I've said this on this video, because it's a really important thing.
It's an amazing thought, and I think you sum it up perfectly, because without love, I mean, there's many things you can't do. My Zeppelin channel is based around love for the band, admiration for the band. I know some people want to, you know, maybe do clickbait stuff for views, but no, it's a labor of love. Like, for example, when I make a script on the making of an album or tour, I channel it or view it on my experiences as a musician for 22 years, but always love about giving and the energy you get. And something that I always tell the subscribers on my channel, I do live sessions on Wednesdays. I play music and I play Zeppelin covers, of course, but I tell them that the collective energy of the channel is built around that, you know, appreciation and communication. And in the end, like you put it, it's love. And
because Led Zeppelin is not Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, and John Paul Jones. Led Zeppelin is all the fans all over the world loving that band. That's what and I can remember, if we used to meet quite a lot of weird Led Zepp fans, and sometimes you would get into some strange situations, and we would start taking the mickey out of these people, and Robert wouldn't have it. I remember him telling us, he goes, no, he says, stop acting like that. He goes, you're here because of them.
Wow.
You know, you're here. This is why you're doing. I remember him saying, you're here because of them. Because of the love of not him or Jimmy Page, but the love of the music of Led Zeppelin.
On that thought, you know, I played on tribute bands, Zeppelin tribute bands, and in my country here, I'm known for being obsessed with Jimmy and Zeppelin. I usually get into the performance side of things, you know, all the moves and stuff. But every time I perform the music, it's not that I'm playing a cover, is that I'm celebrating their legacy, almost to the point that they're sitting there in front of me. And I think, you know, respecting the music is key. And I think that's how this happens. I mean, this interview stems from the respect and love for music.
And of course, you know, whether they were doing the same towards, I don't know, Bob Dylan or Muddy Waters, you know, or Ravi Shankar or whatever it is that there was floating their boat. That is what Zeppelin would do, and you really feel it that with their music. They were always a tribute to music. That was
Yes.
what they were. And their real genius was which I always felt happens around about Led Zepp 3. The first two albums are incredible because it's like they're like creating heavy metal, basically. That's what they're doing on those first two albums. But when they get to Led Zeppelin 3, they suddenly find a way of playing the blues, for example, on Since You've Been Gone, which is uniquely them. And it shows you the way of how to deal with influences, how to find your way of doing it, and I think that's the third album is where they make their great innovation. That's where they do something with the music. And then after that, I think Led Zepp 4 is just a consolidation of Led Zepp 3, which for me, that album's almost like the perfect album.
Is that your favorite Zeppelin album?
I couldn't say a favorite, but for me, that's a perfect album. It's it's just absolute. They don't put a foot wrong. I would said this to Robert. I said Led Zepp 4 is just the perfect album. He said it's weird when you say that. He says because I was 23 years old and we were just basically prattling about. He said that's what I remember, was just having a laugh. John was trying to get to double bass drum in there, and we'd set it up, and then we'd grab it and run it and throw it in a hedge outside, and he'd get angry and come stomping in, and then we'd make a cup of tea and we'd sit down and start jamming, and then the next thing you know, it's like going to California comes out all like Battle of Evermore. Just they're like 23 years old.
That's mind blowing.
Him and John are 23 years old on that album.
Wow. And I think that the compositions from 4, they have their roots, of course, in 3. For example, there's the section before this, the guitar solo on Stairway to Heaven, the D chord motif that comes from Tangerine, and we have Black Dog that comes from 3 as well, and the blues workings of Hats Off to Roy Harper. That's like When the Levee Breaks. So it's a very foundational album for Led Zeppelin 4.
It's very interesting. I think one of the things I realized with Led Zeppelin is it's that period between 69 and 71 when they make those first 4 albums. It's a matter of months. It's just months. It's incredible. Yeah. But the only album I'm not so keen on, which you probably won't like, is In Through the Outdoor. That was never.
Oh no.
Yes, obviously you've got 150 copies of it there, but I do really, really like Presence. I think Presence is to me, if you want to hear them as a band playing and go and marvel at the genius of that band, it's Presence. Because that's when you hear it's like guitar, bass, and drums most of the time. It's not all like overdubbed. It's what Led Zeppelin sound like. In my time of going on Physical Graffiti, it's got the same sound as well. That's when you hear what Led Zeppelin sound like. And that aspect I love. And then there's the like House of the Holy when they're just going bonkers, which is I love all that as well. And then carry on. Sorry.
No, sorry. I think that also the reason I like Into the Outdoor so much is because of the miracle of them actually doing the album, and the circumstances, and also how the sound was changing towards the 80s. I agree that Presence is their most daring album, because the songs are so strange in a good way.
And I'm a drummer, so that Bonham is at the peak. I mean, it's the same time as Bonzo's Montreux, isn't it? He's at his absolute peak. He's also at his peak on In Through the Outdoor. I mean, the drumming on, Fall in the Rain is unbelievable. And it's so, I mean, they must have all been worried about Jimmy, not John Bonham at that point in time, So it's so sad. The other album I absolutely love is Coda. And Coda stands up as a brilliant album to me. It doesn't sound like outtakes. It's absolutely incredible. But of course, I became a Led Zeppelin fan around about 82 when I was 14, maybe 13, probably about 1981 when I first heard them. By 82, I'm an absolute fan. And then Coda comes out. So I bought Coda, and it was like new Led Zeppelin. And Weird and Grooves just takes your head off. Poor Tom is as good as anything on Led Zeppelin 3. The live version of I Can't Quit You is better than the one on the first album.
I agree. Yeah.
You know, even I felt that the outtakes from In Through the Outdoor, I was like, why didn't they put these on In Through the Outdoor? And of course, Bonzo's Montreux is just. I never cared much for Moby Dick, that solo. For me, it was Bonzo's Montreux. That's an incredible achievement for a drummer.
I agree. I play guitar, but I'm a frustrated drummer, so I love drumming. And Coda is one of the best in terms of drumming. I mean, it's a delight to hear Bonham.
Yeah, that drum beat on Poor Tom.
Addictive.
Yeah. The thing with Bonham, everyone goes on about his technique.
Yeah,
it's not that. I mean, there's drummers like Billy Cobham and all that. They got way more technique than John Bonham, and no Led Zeppelin fan wants to admit that. It's not that makes him great. Part of it is the sound. It's the way Jimmy Page would produce John Bonham, which was in his hands as well. I'm not denying it, but John Bonham has a certain drum sound. But the thing for me is, he just comes after beat, which is just unbelievably well-constructed beats of songs, as I said earlier. I mean, if I was in the studio and they were putting down Poor Tom, how the hell do you come up with that? Get all on the... It's just bonkers, And there's so many beats like that. And, he'll do a roll and he won't come in on the one. He'll go over the bar and then crash it in a certain place. And not just because he's doing it weird. It's because Jimmy Page's riff, he's been able to pull out a certain aspect of Jimmy Page's riff and been able to, find something within it, or Robert's vocal. He was able to find ways, and get in between those vocal sounds. You listen to Achilles' Last Stand and you hear those explosive fills from Bonham and how they just seem to punctuate what Robert's doing, they're absolutely incredible. And, playing with Robert, I know I've said it before, but that was the thing I learned. That is the hardest thing to do. Not play at a million miles an hour or do 3 different time signatures with each hand. That's just, that's tricks, And today in the internet age, this gets forgotten because so many musicians are just, on Instagram showing off their latest lick.
Yeah.
And people aren't, that and then a lot of songs are computer based. And I really feel the world is missing what a real musician can do for a song. I don't know if you've heard like Extreme's new album, and Nuno Betancourt's just set the world on fire because he's actually played the bloody guitar, and he play guitar solos, amazing, but amazing within the context of the song. That take the song, because a guitar solo should take that second chorus and then lift you up to this point and then drop you at a higher place, And Nuno's a master of that, absolute master of that, and I think the world's missing that now. So this is where we go back marveling at bands like Led Zeppelin, because they can walk in a room with a song and turn it into something else, Truth.
Yeah, I think the element of live playing is essential. I usually go to jams on a weekly basis because I don't want to lose that, the human aspect. I have a couple of questions more regarding the Priory of Brion.
Yeah.
You mentioned on your video that it kept going into early 2001. When did it actually stop, or as a project?
I got told it stopped in January 2001. So we did the Christmas gigs, right? When I look back, it was quite obvious that the gig at the Wolf Run was the last gig. It was the way it all went off. It felt like the last gig. But we had dates in Norway booked, and I had those in the diary. And I can remember this fateful day. I've never said this, where I'd gone shopping. And I'd parked my car, and as I walked out, I saw that my car was clamped, and then there was these 2 guys sat there demanding £120 off me, which is a considerable sum of money, to get my car unclamped. And as that was going on, Robert called me up and said, "I'm packing the Priory in, and I was on the phone going, "Okay,
no.
Robert, yeah." Oh, and it was like I'd had this 2 years of it was just all amazing, and then when I got told that the band was over, I was getting my car clamped and trying to, it all hit, and early 2001 was a hard time for me because we'd done that all we'd done was that band, and although in terms of Robert, it had, it hadn't been like a Page and Plant tour, but for us, we'd been on reasonable money. Robert had paid us very well. He'd shared the wealth. He'd looked after us. He'd done everything that a good guy should. And I hadn't done anything else. I hadn't thought about what I was going to do. And I sort of, popped out of that band, and I didn't know what the hell to do, And it's like, in the end, I had no job. I managed to land a gig in an Oasis tribute band.
Wow.
And I can remember in February, I was in a pub playing Oasis to about 30 people in that pub. And that was the drop down, from that, whilst Robert had gone and put together a band of superstars, the Shapeshifters, which everybody was, this is the better version of the Priory. But, now I'm older, I've said this to Robert, I said, I have never met anybody who saw the Priory or heard it and went, I don't think it was that good. People really liked it. They did.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you about that, the aftermath of when it stops, and because Dreamland, Robert's album from 2002, it has 4 songs that you guys did. Hey Joe, Songs to the Siren, Darkness, Darkness, and what was the other one? There's another one that I'm missing. Sorry about that. But there's 4 songs.
Morning Dew.
You guys put. Yes, Morning Dew. Yeah. What do you feel when that record came out? And maybe you had flashbacks of playing the songs with him. I know there's some variations.
So, if you take Darkness, Darkness, if you've heard the Youngbloods, that's it's not upbeat, but it's got a certain sound to it. Our arrangement we came up with, that was our arrangement of Darkness, Darkness, that brooding sound with the electric piano. And when I heard the Darkness, Darkness version, I thought, well, it has the DNA of our arrangement in it without a doubt. And then I think he got nominated for a Grammy for the arrangements, and that was a bit like, oh my God, that's our arrangements pretty much, And also, I think our version with My Bell, see, they didn't have the bell. Yes. I nicked it off Robert, you see. I'd still got the bell, and I think, without the bell, it's not Darkness, Darkness, and that's the way it is. So
I agree.
It was depressing afterwards. But I went through a time where I used to hate to think about the band, and it was all a bit bleak, And the reason for that is because you're thinking, what did I do wrong? Why didn't I come up with what Robert wanted? Why didn't he take me on to the next band? Why? Because I didn't understand that the reason Robert had come to us was because he wanted some fresh ideas. And Michael Lee, who was drumming in Page and Plant, it wasn't like I was better than Michael Lee, because I wasn't. And a few years later, when I was playing with a guy called Ian Parker, we opened up on a Thin Lizzy. They reformed Thin Lizzy, and Michael Lee was on drums for that. And I really got close to Michael Lee on that tour and chatted a lot. And we ended up sharing the experiences rather than feeling that, as he was a bit miffed, that he was ready to go. He was ready to go. That him and Jimmy had done the 3rd album, and then Robert said, "I'm not doing that 3rd album." Okay, we'll just drop. So he was a bit miffed that I'd come along, and then I was a bit miffed that Clive Deemer had come and replaced me.
Right.
And then I bumped into Clive Deemer a few years later, and he goes, "I never knew why Robert stopped using me." Like, no, but I do. It's because Robert is not the Rolling Stones or AC/DC. Robert needs these other ideas, and he comes in and he works with those ideas, and he gets another place, and once he's another place, he's got that thing, and that is why he doesn't go back to Jimmy Page, who is one of the greatest rock guitarists of all time, but he's not going to go back there. And I'm 55 now, and I totally understand why. Because it doesn't matter what Robert does when he stands on stage. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's wonderful, isn't it?" But it'll
Yeah.
never be as good as them in 1973 on Song Remains the Same. Even though it's better. Even though in a way it's better because they've got all the songs to choose from and they're really experienced. And the way they played on Celebration Day was phenomenal. In many respects, they're much truer, better renditions than on Song Remains the Same, which was cut together. All these, that doesn't matter. And Robert knows that. Robert knows it's diminishing returns, and they've done it. They've done it enough times. And I think Celebration Day, after a few failed attempts, Celebration Day, they've nailed it. It's done. It's done. So anybody watching this is my opinion. You're not going to get anything more. You will only get less out of it. And so Robert will continually forge forwards. Now, the guys that are in Saving Grace, which is the thing he's doing at the moment, I was in a band with them called Quill here in the UK. No one realizes this is a connection between Priory because, and I was actually jamming with those guys before they performed Saving Grace. Now, I know I am absolutely the wrong drummer for Saving Grace because Robert is now, he is exploring an ethereal, almost like sort of sensual, mystical part of the song. It's exploring the vocal harmonies. The first time he's ever had, someone else singing alongside him. Not the first time, but he did it with, the Raining Sand now. But he is exploring an area, and I'm not the right guy to do it. I could do it. I could try my best. I could get on, and I've learned a lot. But in the end, I'm a different player. I'm in my place, and that is the way music works. So all these things I learned afterwards, and I was very happy that I reconnected with Robert a few years ago. We saw a lot of each other for various reasons, and I was able to thank him. I was able to thank him, and I'm saying it on this video. I thank Robert for really giving me an incredible insight into the thing that I love, which is music. He gave me an insight which I haven't got now. This house I'm sat in, some of the bricks he owns because it was the down payment from my house came from the money I made from Robert. So there's that part of it as well. So when I look back, and I was a bit miffed, and I wasn't miffed. I was like, what did I do wrong? What did Robert want from me? Did I do a good job? All that type of stuff. That was sort of my ego and bits of self-loathing and really not understanding what music's about. I'm much happier doing music now. I think I'm a much better musician, and I think I'm very proud of the fact that when I was in the band with Robert, he used to talk about the history of music, and I didn't have a clue. And now I have a YouTube where I talk about that very stuff. And part of that comes back to my experience of playing with Robert and really exploring that history. That was very important. That switched me on to something which now I'm doing on the channel. So, and this is the thing that those guys did. And like you yourself, your life completely is erratically changed and structured because of what those guys did. And
yes,
and that keeps going on, and hopefully people will watch this video and they will get something out of it. And I think you've done a very good interview because I've talked about a lot of stuff I've never spoken about. We've done Anti-Braxton, we've done Love, we've done the whole thing.
No, I'm honored, and this is a learning experience for me. I'm also I'm thinking of the music and the documentaries I've done in the past. From what you're telling me, it also changes the perspective on them, and I feel honored and thankful that I'm able to do this and to share this time with you, because you have so much background on the playing with bands on circuits, in different countries. I wish I had that, but this is a way to experience it through you. So I'm really thankful. I have one last question.
Yeah.
What was of the band of the Priory of Brion bandmates after the Priory of Brion was over? What was the career for each one? If you can Oh,
So
shit.
I then went into the world of blues, and I played with I did some depth gigs with a guitarist called Joanne Shaw Taylor and Ainsley Lister, and ended up playing with a guy called Ian Parker, and we toured with like doing tours with Walter Trout, and that's where I did my heavy touring, was with Ian, because that was the blues circuit. I like the blues. I really do like the blues, but I wanted something more. I think I always wanted to make my name as a drummer. That was what I wanted to do. So in the mid 2000s, I then joined IQ, which is a progressive rock band, and then I formed a band called Frost, which was relatively successful. And at the same time, I then started doing drum clinics where I got to play with people like Billy Cobham and Terry Bozzio and all my heroes. And I went and experienced that. Finally, I got to that point, where I experienced being with the musos and doing all that. And so I taught music. I was head of music in a college, played in, and I've done that right up until now, until the YouTube. And I started doing now the YouTube is becoming a really, really big thing, because I absolutely love it, and it's like connected with people like you all the time. I'm connected with new people. It's an incredible thing. So I'm now involved in a lot of that type of stuff, is the YouTube's type of stuff, and I'm really interested in getting out and talking about music. This is why I love doing this, and this is why hopefully this hasn't just been me telling tour stories. We've actually talked about the philosophy of music and what
Yes.
I don't think anyone's ever said the stuff I've said about what I got from Robert. That is the honest truth of my heart. So Paul Timothy, he then we'd got whilst I was in the Priory, we had a group making dance music called the Wicker Men. Once I left that, and then that evolved into a group called Soul Central, and Tim went on to have one of the biggest house record hits in the world.
No way.
Yeah, Soul Central, Strings of Life, Stronger on My Own. Google it. Tim is something special. And he went on to have a hit record. And I can remember watching the history of house music. They had a documentary on, and the last song they covered was Tim's song. And I was very proud of Tim for doing that. Tim toured around the world as a superstar DJ, ends up in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, he starts doing TikTok videos, and he now is a celebrity in Vietnam, and he's in films acting and doing TikTok stuff. Right. Tim's Paul Wetton, who was the bass player, is one of the greatest guitarists I've ever worked with. An unbelievable guitarist. On the last few gigs, I collect the bootlegs out. We do a Hendrix track, If 6 Was 9, and the guitar solo on that is Paul, and you'll hear what he was like. I can never see Robert's face drop more than when Paul actually, after being in the band for 2 years, picked up a guitar and played it for Robert. And I can remember him just going like this. So Paul's played and gigged, and he's still gigging, he's still playing. He does loads of funk. He's in a reggae band. He actually played on some of Tim's hit records. But so he's still out there playing. So Kevin Gammond has gone on to do a thing called Mass Labs, which has worked with charity, different charity organizations, and he's worked against knife crime. And Kevin Gammond, hopefully he watches this and sees that you're a good guy and sees what we've said, and he never know, because he'll never do an interview. But if you could get an interview with Kev, because he goes way back, right? He got the gig at 16 or 17 with Jimmy Cliff, before his mates John Bonham and Robert Platt had done anything. He was the first guy down London playing this stuff. He was in the band with the Band of Joy. He played guitar in Tim Rose with John Bonham. He was in all of that. And then once, as you said in your video, then he formed Bronco, an incredible band. He toured with Jimmy Witherspoon. He played with people like Art Farmer. He went out to Holland and made avant-garde, like modern classical music, with Okatus, which is Louis Anderson's avant-garde group. He's done some incredible stuff. And when I was a kid in my town, he had a band called Pictures in the Dark Room, and they were legendary. And Kev used to do gigs where he'd encase his guitar in a block of ice with the cable, and he'd turn up to the venue, and there'd be this guitar in a block of ice plugged in. extreme volume, and he'd start soaring through the ice, and you'd hear the cracks.
What?
Yeah, he used to do guitar, so he used to just put little wind-up toys on his guitar and have them running up and down his guitar. Unbelievable guy. And
Wow.
when I hooked up, I was a very young guy, and I met up with Kev, and we started talking about Albert Ayler. And I think he went, "Oh my God, this kid knows Albert Ayler." And he just sort of put his arm around me, and we've been connected ever since. And that's why I ended up playing with, I ended up playing with Robert Plant, because of me and, Kev's chatting about Archie Shepp and Albert Ayler and free jazz. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
An amazing bunch of guys.
Yes, I mean, it sounds like all of you were very talented, are still very talented, and with experience, you grow as humans and musicians, which is usually what we all want, right?
That is what it's all about, and that's what Robert's trying to do, and he's so good at it that he's been able to do the things he's done with it, and that's the thing that nobody gets. And so, why does he go back and form Led Zeppelin? Because that is what Robert does.
Yeah.
I agree. Not AC/DC, he's not the Rolling Stones. They haven't found the magic formula, going to mine it to the rest of the time. It's,
Zeppelin. As a Zeppelin fan, I've always enjoyed the fact that my favorite band is not like that it has a limited time and space, and doing these episodes and deep dives, I've actually valued Robert's career more. I'm a huge fan of his, Dreamland on career. I have his, of course, latest album, which I love, and the way he evolved as a person. I listened to him, maybe an interview from 2014. He's a different person. I mean, for good,
Yeah, not without that. And the thing is that I'll say this: Led Zeppelin were not about songs. They weren't in the end. They were about an attitude and a certain stance and a shape. That's what Zeppelin were about, and they knocked the world out with that. As time went on, Robert has explored the song, and he's a master songwriter now. Right? And so if you really want to hear him sing a song, as opposed to go push, yeah, and all that bit that they did with Zeppelin, it's another thing. It's another thing, and that is his career. He has got closer and closer to the truth of the song. Last time I saw him, he said he goes that he was really interested in 3-chord songs. 3 chords of the truth. Woody Guthrie, Lead Belly, Charlie Patton. That's where he goes back to, and he goes with that, and he takes it to the future.
True.
Incredible guy. We better draw this to a close, because I got another meeting in about 5 minutes.
This has been great, Andy. I thank you very much for this interview. I'll definitely post it on my channel and do maybe a brief intro, and I hope this brings many people closer to the Priory of Brion project, and also to your projects as well.
Yes, because I think you lot are watching this. Come on closer to my project over on my YouTube.
Yes.
Jose, you'll put it in the link below, won't you? And if you're watching this on my channel, check out JC and the Led Zeppelin. It's the best one I've seen. This is why I made contact. Because when I watched your Priory Brion video, I sat there and thought, well, let's see what he's got wrong. Let's see what he's got wrong then. And I sat there with also, I went, oh my God, it's better than some of the biographies.
Wow. Thanks,
you haven't just gone and read a book, and you've really done your research, And I'll come back. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of stuff here that I wanted to show you.
Yeah.
I'll pull out one thing. That's a letter to me from Robert.
Wow. Man, that's... Wow.
Why Andy was deciphering the Dead Sea Scrolls. Might be easier to think of Polydor pressed up a dodgy batch of CDs. Mine is as bad as Kev's. Right, we were trying. This is when because we were listening to all these songs. He was searching, and he's written me a letter. Look at the headed paper. It's like incredible.
Yeah, that's
speak soon, Robert. And that's
a treasure
that I've held on to. And about the music, I've got. These must be really rare. The Priory of Brion. Come on, don't. Priory of Brion press release pack.
Wow, I've never seen that, man.
No,
that's.
Don't think I think I'm probably the only person who's got one of those.
Wow.
I'll come on again, because it'd be nice to just have a good long chat about other music as well. So I'll come on. and sort of the origins and roots, because what we haven't talked about is all the bands that
Please.
we were channeling,
Yes.
like Love and the Youngbloods and
Yes.
Moby Grape and all that stuff. That would be great too.
We can talk about free jazz. I mean,
let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to stop recording now. Is that okay?
Yes,
so
that's fine.
Thanks for doing that, Jose. And this has been a really enjoyable interview.